Hello, good afternoon. It is Let's Talk Live. You are joining us. If you're just tuning into the show, it's HAWM Law and Let's Talk Live. We have another episode of our immigrant stories in the 2022. You see the split screen here. It's one of my former clients, Eldon Lewis. We'll be talking to him about his journey, his experience to becoming a U.S. citizen. So that's important. I'm going to give it a couple seconds for people to join us on the show. I know it's after lunch hour, but it is going to be a very, very good show. And of course, you're tuning in to HAWM Law. We are a multi-service law firm out of Orlando, Florida. We practice in the areas of immigration, criminal defense, family law, personal injury, and I want to talk about immigration. It's going crazy in the immigration world. Everybody is up in arms at how long the process is taking, how difficult it's becoming to get either your work permit, to renew it, to do all these different things. And people are in limbo. So today I wanted to talk about a very, very effective and useful option for individuals who are stuck in immigration limbo. And that is called federal action, where we are going to sue the government in order for you to obtain your benefits and not have to continue to wait. We don't want you to continue to have this lengthy wait of a process to get your immigration status, because we do have the option to sue the government. And usually when we are suing the US government, we have two main means. It's either a mandamus action or an action under the Administrative Procedures Act. And what those lawsuits really are asking courts to do is usually to instruct USCIS to make a decision on a case where they have either made an erroneous decision or where they have just failed to act all out. And as a government agency, and especially when you applied for benefits, there is an obligation for that agency to do their job. And in the crisis that we're in right now, there are a lot of lost cases that are beyond processing times, and they are truly lost in the abyss of the US immigration crisis. And those are the cases that we need to go a little step further and be more assertive or offensive in our strategy. And part of that strategy is to sue the US government. And that brings me to our guest today, which is Mr. Eldon Lewis, who is one of my former clients. So he hired our firm to represent him to do exactly what we are talking about today, which is to sue the US government. So Mr. Lewis, who are you? Where are you? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your immigration journey, how you ended up in the United States and what part of the United States you are. And then we'll talk about what led you to even coming to Harm Law for legal advice.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Attorney Watson. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk and share my story with you and your audience with the hopes that it will benefit someone. So my name is Eldon. I'm based in Houston. I've been in the US now for probably, maybe 2 decades. A little bit more than that now at this point. Started off as a student. I'm originally from Jamaica. I went to high school in Jamaica.
Right.
Then came
so
to
typical journey. You went to high school in Jamaica,
Yep.
and then you decided to shipping out for college, right?
Yeah, I decided to ship out to college and come and get the American experience. Then it worked out where I decided that this might be a good place for me to stay, live and work for a little while. That little while, of course, morphed into a couple of years. But that's a different story that we can talk about at some other time.
That's a whole.
So, certainly after college, went to grad school.
But you started out on a student visa,
yeah,
correct?
Started out F1. So I did the whole F1 OPT route.
Right.
Then went grad school, then H1 for several years, and then
Great.
Got married. Life changed.
So you and if you know Eldon refers to his wife as the governor.
Yeah, the commanding officer is a close enough. It's a close enough kind of deal. And so we've been at it for a long time. And I'm grateful for her and just grateful for everything that she brings into my life and brings to our family, really. And
Right.
it's centered on that it's always good to recognize who is in charge of the household, so there's no confusion about that, right?
Right.
My,
And is
the
that and it was through your wife that you ultimately got your residency.
Yeah, it was through my wife at the time. It was I was still working, and then met her, and then it was kind of the toss up, but eventually decided to file for residency through the wife.
Right.
And gosh, that was several years ago, and we're still married, still happily married, and we have a couple now we have a couple children in the family doing our thing,
That's right.
and
Yeah,
yeah. So,
you almost a full slice of the American dream pie,
well,
right?
I mean, I think we had most of it. I think the
Right.
one missing element was being able to fully contribute to the democracy and the beautiful place that is America, right? And I think this is what brought me to you. When I think about where we are, and had us, of course, clearly, as soon as I was able to naturalize or apply for naturalization, I did that. Um,
Right.
didn't hear
And
anything
what
from
year, if you recall, when did you apply
it,
to get your citizenship?
17, 18. Yeah,
Okay.
somewhere around there, 17, 18.
Right.
So you're talking about maybe, gosh, maybe 4 or 5 years. It's been a minute. It's been a long
Wow.
minute.
And
Um,
just so our audience is clear that Mr. Lewis had applied for his U.S. citizenship about 5 years ago,
yep,
and that application was pending all this time.
yep. So yeah, so strangest thing, right? Put the
Right.
application in, heard, went in. I was told that I was unable to naturalize for any number of reasons. Actually, not any number of reasons, for reasons that were unclear to me. Anyway,
Right.
so that I would have to come back, um,
Right.
apply again, send some paperwork in, and then come back. Send the paperwork in. Um, didn't hear anything. It was essentially what Attorney Watson has said. It remained in limbo for like, up
Just
until recently.
waiting.
Yep.
So
And I think,
before we go into the story, what happened after that, right?
mhm.
How did you find me? How
a,
did we get connected?
a, a,
That's
fri-
what I want people to know.
a friend of a friend, and I have a relative that spoke very, very highly of the experience with Attorney Watson, who shall remain unnamed. But the relative connected us and said, after I had explained the situation and what was going on, she said, "Man, this is foolishness. This is taking a long time. This seems something is unusual. Are you sure everything is okay? I think we need to seek additional legal counsel."
Right.
Um, so we got on a Zoom call because we're in different regions of the world. She's in Florida, I'm in Texas. So we
Right.
got on a Zoom call and did an initial consultation. From that, I outlined what the situation was and said, "Hey, what do you think we should do next?" Um, I said, "Here, what are my options?" Was the specific. I said, like, "What are my options?"
Right.
And she said, "Well, there are a number of options," and she outlined them and said, "Boy, this is the one that you should think about."
And that option was to sue the government.
Yep, that option. That
When I
option.
told you that the option I would recommend for your case would be to sue the government, what was your initial internal response to
My,
hearing that?
my internal response of clear was resistance, right? It wasn't like warm acceptance, because nobody gets up out of the bed and says they're going to sue the government, right? So
Right.
I think there was initial resistance, and said, I said, "Thank you for sharing the option. Let me think about it. Let me talk it over with the commanding officer, and talk it over with my family, and see if this is the right option. Is
What
there a
did you
less
think
aggressive?
at that point? What were you thinking could
Is
happen if you
is
sued the
is
U.S. government?
is there a less is because my initial thought, and I seem to recall this, was, is there a less aggressive stance that we could take? Could we write? Is there somebody we could talk to? The usual, right? Like,
Right.
because saying you're going to create a lawsuit seems to be an extreme measure. But I think for me, what brought clarity was, you had two options. You could continue to wait indefinitely, without any conclusion, and trying to understand, wondering what was going to come next. But you
What
did.
what was what was going to be the cost of waiting to you?
The cost of wasting was no closure, right? The cost of waiting
Right.
was that you would not know what's going to happen because you're already gainfully employed, you're already actively involved in the community. The cost of waiting, however, was that you would know. The cost of
Yeah, and I
waiting was
think you always have a fear too when you're waiting. You're thinking, I wonder if there's something wrong.
and the cost of waiting is you don't know, right? And you don't know
Right.
what's going to happen. You don't know, is there something that I did? No. You know, I mean, I say
Right.
you have those thoughts that cross your mind. They may be in the bottom of your mind, but them cross your mind, right? So you think about them and you say, man, should I take this action? And
Right.
the fact is, like, there was no apparent end in sight.
Right.
And I said, well, man, having been here this long, being a parent, being married to yeah, it's like, man, we really should know.
Right.
And as I get ready to,
When you
the
deliberated with the commanding officer, what did she say? What was the group
the the
consensus
the, uh,
about?
the, the question is always, you sure? You sure about this? That's generally the question the commanding officer always asking, are you sure?
Right.
And I said, yes, I think we're sure. And what do you think? She said, well, I think it's a good idea. And I said, as long as you're with it, I'm with it, you know.
Right.
And since I move forward and you have trusted, you know, first of all, who's leading you through it? That was the first question. Who told you this, and who's leading you through the process,
Right.
and guiding you through the process? And are you confident in counsel that you would be, one, you'd be adequately represented, and two, that you'll get the desired result? If all those things happen to be true, then you should move forward.
Right.
And three, and at some point you'll know something, right?
Right.
I said, yeah, all those things are true. I just said, all right, let's do it. Because you're not doing anything that you're not supposed to, and it's important that we know. So after that, we got back with you, or I got back
But
with you,
and before we even go into how what happened once we got back and you pulled the trigger,
right?
can you tell me how you felt about working with an attorney that was in a whole different state? You're in Texas, I'm
Right.
in Florida. We're meeting remotely, kind of just like how we are here.
Right.
What was that experience like? What were your thoughts? What were tell me about that.
I think remote. I think in the pandemic we learned that you don't need to be at least certainly in the pandemic I learned that you don't need to be physically present to build strong and effective relationships. But any good relationship, the foundation of that is trust, right?
Right. Right.
Having, as I mentioned earlier, had your credentials verified in these streets, by people who are well versed in the area, and I know have had positive experiences with you. It was a seamless kind of, for me anyway, it was a seamless experience.
Right.
Everything happens digitally via a secure, and I guess I can talk about that. I talk about secure communication, so it wasn't regular email. There's a platform where documents are uploaded, and it's a secure platform, so it's
Right.
not wasn't communicating via text or anything like that. It was communicating via the secure platform. Responses were timely. You got what you needed, and you could ask questions if you had them. I didn't have many questions, but if you had questions, I could.
And I give you credit. Once you made that decision to move forward, you were 100% on board. You were like, we're doing this, we're going
But
forward,
you
we're
have to be.
compliant, you get the documents
But
in,
you have to.
you
But
were
you
on
have to be.
fire.
But you
Yes,
have to be.
I agree.
You have to be.
You
Is
definitely have to be. And then, and just for our listeners and their perspective, we started this process. Let's say it was in December,
yeah.
and I believe it was around December,
About the
and
summer.
by March or April, you are a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, yeah. So I think the one I think what was clear was taking this action activated the process, and I think you got responses. You heard from people. You knew what your status was, and so you had regular communication. I mean, not you,
Right.
but through your attorney.
Correct.
And that experience, it was quick. I mean, I think once everybody got the information, the government was served. They issued a response. You had a court date, and once the court date was settled, everything moved with amazing efficiency.
Yeah. Which is the
So
way it should be, without having to get into court. But unfortunately, it's not. And so I think these are the types of cases. If you've applied for your citizenship and you are sitting there waiting for 3-4 years,
Right.
and that's not acceptable, you know. And I don't know if you are aware of this, but by law, your citizenship application should be adjudicated, meaning decided. You have a decision on it within
Mhm.
120 days of an interview. In your case, we didn't even get to an interview. Well, you had an interview, but we didn't even get to the substance of the interview and the examination because there were errors on the part of USCIS that is of no fault to you, right?
Right.
And and unfortunately, the US government is a big ship. And when they make an error, you as an immigrant and as an applicant, you pay for it. And so we have to go outside of the ship and look for resolution outside, and that is the government, and that is the courts. That is what the courts is. It's there to be the check and balances to ensure that the other parts of the process are running smoothly. And that is what brought Mr. Lewis to me, and that is what he entrusted his his immigration situation in our hands to handle, right? And we were successful, and it's usually a very effective process on getting the ball rolling, for sure. So I told you that, I kind of fast paced it to letting the audience know that you are now a citizen. You're
Right.
now going to be contributing to the democracy. But then just tell me about what that really means for you and your family, having your citizenship.
Well, I mean, I think it is being able to, one of the privileges of being a citizen is the ability to vote and to
Correct.
serve on a jury, right?
I'm glad you
Mo-
mentioned jury. I'm glad you mentioned it.
well, I think, but I do think being able to fully engage in civic life is important, especially if you have a family. You want to demonstrate to your family, and especially if you have children, right? You want them to be able to fully engage in civic life and be contributing citizens. And of
Right.
course, you have to model that example. It also means, in many instances, if something changes in your life, you can now apply for federal employment should you want to do that, because there are certain opportunities that are only available to US citizens.
Right.
I think it is also the ability to explore new opportunities. It is also, for me, the ability to this is home now, right?
Right.
This is, I will always be proud of the land of my birth, always.
Right.
However, this is also the place where I've selected to raise my family. So
Right.
being here for the long term for my
And
family
yeah,
is
absolutely.
certainly very, very important for me. And I think so. That is what it means. And I think some will argue that there's really no big difference, but there is something to be said about being, wherever you fall on the spectrum, being able to participate, which it makes a huge difference.
Correct. And having the security that you cannot be deported.
Well, yes, that too, right? If you are doing, hopefully none of us will ever find ourselves in a situation where you are likely to be placed in proceedings. The
Right.
goal is never to be in that situation, but in the event that you should end up on the other side of the law, you certainly don't want to compound your legal troubles with the risk of deportation. My goal is to never,
Absolutely.
of course, end up in that situation. Um, but yeah, so definitely, I will tell folks though that once you get over the initial resistance, there has to be a level of trust and confidence in your legal counsel. If you,
Right.
in the absence of trust, you're going to struggle. And you really have to be confident in the advice that you're getting, and most importantly, be willing to take action to do it and get
So
over that. Go ahead.
you
Sorry.
mentioned getting over the resistance. So for anyone who's listening, who's out there right now in a position that you were in, waiting, and waiting without no insight, out there, how do they get over the resistance? Tell them. Look, I want you to tell them. to encourage them. Give them some words that is going to get them to leap
Well, I
to
mean,
where you are today.
well, I think it is understanding what your why is. Is staying where you are. You know, the way I'll put it is, time is going to pass anyway. So you have a couple of choices. You can either stay where you are and wish that you took action 5 years from now, or 2 years from now, or a year from now, or you can take action and actively pursue that goal, whatever it is, right? In your case, if it is an immigration benefit, if it is a change in status, the cost, if you look back a year from now, will you be satisfied with yourself that you took no action, even though an option was presented to you?
Right.
And if I think for me, once you got over well, this is a fairly routine thing. You're not doing anything that is illegal, or it's going to,
Absolutely.
it's a legal remedy that is available to you, then why not? But I will
Absolutely.
tell you, growing up in an island, this is not a thing that people, this is not your first resource. Nobody tells you that you're going to take on and sue, and that is because it's a more confrontational approach. And in some
Absolutely.
instances, we are, and let me speak for myself, I found that that is not often the first resort. You will try to talk, you will try to write letters, you will try to engage in different forms, but that is not the first resort.
Right.
But if you are thinking about options and you've tried, because I'm clearly, what I will tell you is, if depending on your legal situation, I don't just what I'll tell you is, if depending on your legal situation, consult counsel to determine if the right, if
That's
it's the right,
correct.
it,
Not everybody's case
it,
is the same.
is the right option for you. So what I will tell you is, consult your legal counsel, as trusted legal counsel who has had a successful record,
Right.
to find out if that's the right next step for you. But if it
Absolutely.
is, and you have said that this is for me, and I'm really considering this option, really think about what it will mean for you. More importantly, what if you have a family, thinking about what that will mean for your family, and then move forward. But what I and also follow instructions. It's very important for you to follow it. Very, very important to follow detailed instructions. Attorney Watson will provide very, very, very detailed instruction, and then she will also check for understanding. So she will give you an instruction, and then she will say, "Do you understand what this means? And are you ready?" She will ask the same question in multiple forms, but it is really just to check for understanding. So I think it is really, once you get over that and you're ready to move forward, then just
Right.
do it. Muster up the courage, and don't let fear keep you from doing or being
Yes.
who you can and should be.
Yeah, it's so true, true, so true, Eldon. This is part of the tools that you have to get your legal status sorted out. And it doesn't just apply to individuals looking for their citizenship. If your case is in limbo waiting for an adjustment of status, and I understand processing times are a little bit longer, but you have some cases that in your gut, you say to yourself, there has to be something wrong. Even when the cases are taking 2 years to process, you've been waiting on your green card for 5 years. Your gut is telling you that something is wrong. And at the very least, you should seek counsel. You should go out there and find out, one, what is wrong and what can I do about it? Those are the two things that is most important. And we at Harm Law are here to provide that service to you. That is one of the things that we do. We will sit and consult with you just to give you an idea if there is something to be concerned about. And if there is, then like Eldon says, I'm going to go through. I try to be as detailed as possible in terms of advising the client and saying, these are the risks, this is what could happen, and this is where we go from there. But we cross every hurdle together, and we can celebrate all of these things together. I don't want to run over time on the show. And Ellen, I do thank you for taking the time to share your immigrant story and to share your experience. And congratulations on becoming a U.S. naturalized citizen. I know it took you a long route to get there, but I am happy that we were successful in the end, and I'm even more happy that you chose Harm Law to be your attorneys in the process.
Definitely a lot of gratitude to you and the team for all that you've done and all that you continue to do for folks who are seeking to pursue their American dream and or folks who are really unfamiliar with the legal system. And by the way, this is not a plug for Attorney Watson and team. I didn't Google them prior to this, but I should have because the reviews speak for themselves. So I think if you are looking for somebody who is competent, who is smart, who will tell you as it is, then I think if you are exploring options, you definitely want to give Attorney Watson and her team a call. Even if you have an attorney who you're like wondering, man, is this really working out for me? Are they fighting for me? Are they putting forth the best effort? Or is this outside of their ability to deliver? So she didn't pay me to this. This is just me jumping in on the back end. I'm just really telling you that if you are concerned, make a call, send an
Right.
email, get a consultation. You deserve it. Your family deserves it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eldon, for joining us on the show. And I just want my listeners to take away we practice immigration law anywhere in the country. Mr. Lewis is out in Texas, we're in Florida. And what I recommend for my clients, not in every case, is seek advice, right? Anyone out there that is having any issues with their immigration status, seek advice. And then once you've been given trusted advice, take action because you deserve it. Your family deserves it. Thank you for tuning in with us. It's Let's Talk Live. We'll see you at the end of the month for our next show.